Hi guys, it's Cheryl from Tinker's Card Arts, and I thought I would pop in and show you just the basic supplies that you need to get started. I know it's a lot of overwhelm with painting. You might think you need a lot of materials and you need a lot of instruction and you need a lot of time and space to work. So we've talked a little bit about where you work, how little of a space you might be able to get away with just to get started. We've talked about how it's nice if you could have a little corner set up already, how much easier it is to just sit down and paint for a few minutes. But I wanted to show you the materials, just to show you what I work with and just the basics, because you can add all the brushes and you can add all the paints, but you really don't need much to start, truly. What you need to start, a surface to paint on. You can use canvases, which all sorts. This is a gallery wrapped canvas, so these are pretty cool. They come in all shapes. You can see how it has a nice thick wood frame. So these are fun because I paint these. I wrap my painting around the sides. You can set them on a shelf. You can hang them up. You don't need to frame them. They're really a fun choice. You can get all sizes, little ones, rectangles, all sorts of nice sizes. Then you've got just it's a gallery wrapped canvas. It's wrapped on the side, which means again, you can probably paint the edges and hang it up, or you can pop it in a frame. We buy these in bulk lots of times. You see them at Michael's and at the craft stores in the packs. Lots of times on sale. They're a nice grade. They're ready to paint on. They're a good choice. But if you want to just paint on little canvas panels, nothing wrong with that. They're nice hard surface. They are the textured canvas on the front, and again, all sizes. So these are great ideas for canvas surfaces. But remember, you can also paint inside a mixed media pad. Now, this is great for practice when you're watching lessons and classes. You want to just try some ideas. What I recommend for a mixed media pad is the heaviest weight you can find. So this one I actually found recently, and it's 140 pounds. When I say weight, it means how thick the paper is, how heavy the paper is. You can also pick up watercolor paper. That's usually a good heavy paper as well if you want to try something and you don't find this heavyweight mixed media. It's pretty cool because you have, the pages are usually perforated. So if you do come up with something that you absolutely love, you can tear it out and then frame it. It doesn't have to be just temporary or just for practice. So a good place to work and practice, mixed media pad. You can paint on fabric, you can paint on slates, you can paint on wood boards, you can paint on all kinds. I've painted on all kinds of things. Let me show you some things lately, which are baseball cap. So fabric, you can paint on tote bags and aprons and sweatshirts. And that's just the acrylic paint that I'm going to show you right on a different surface. Glasses are fun. Glasses, I do use an acrylic paint, but I do use an all-purpose, all-surface paint. But just keep your eyes open and your mind open. I painted on a skate the other week. Did you see me paint on the skate? That's fun. Same little acrylic paints that we always use. Sometimes when I'm in shopping, like even in the Target, that little dollar section, or not really dollar, these were $3, but you can find all kinds of things you could put painting on. So it doesn't always have to be canvas, a finished frame piece. You can do it on all sorts of things. Wooden cutouts, we do a lot of that sometimes. So that covers surfaces. And again, if you want to get simple and start small, little canvas boards, little mixed media pads, that's fine. What about paints? All right, so there's different types of acrylic paints. You can use the heavy-bodied tubed paints, which I like sometimes for landscapes and something that I really want a lot of texture on. You can get the little craft paints. You find these everywhere. They're not expensive. That's a good way to start. And as far as colors, you don't need all of them. If you have your primary colors, especially in my classes and things, I try to always guide you on mixing from your primaries. Even a little segment here on the color wheel. You could practice, paint a little color wheel up, because you can really mix all your colors. And as we go, I do try to tell you what to use to mix this or that color. But always just put a comment in or ask a question, because if it's a particular teal, sometimes different colors might be a little difficult to mix, but they're not impossible. It's really pretty easy. So you can get your basic colors, but then of course there's a few extra colors that I buy in the bottles because I just like them and I use them a lot, like this little salmon color, a lime green, sometimes the teals. They're all mixable though. You can make them from your primaries. So if you want to start basic and simple, pick up your primary colors in your paints. That would be like your cad yellow, cad red, phthalo, or ultramarine blue. You need your white and your black. Just pick up the basics and get started. So we've got a surface, we've got paint. What about brushes? My brushes aren't really expensive brushes. I have some that I like in particular. Now, lots of times you'll see me painting with these long-handled hog bristle brushes. It's called a filbert because it's the rounded top. They come in all sizes. I usually have 3 sizes. I would have this bigger one, which is like this is a 12. And then I maybe have an 8 or a 6. Mostly the big one I like. I love the way it will dig into the nooks and crannies of the canvas for me. So I always have these. You'd find them more in the art supply, the fine art section for acrylic or oil painting. The rest of them are just simply synthetics, which if you take care of them, they last a long time. So you don't need a lot. I like to have a little round, like a little detail brush. And I do like to have, and this one looks like it's not in great shape, but it really does get a nice point. It's a liner brush, so it's kind of long, and you can get some nice long lines. It holds a good bit of paint, and you can make some nice details with that. I do like to have one filbert. I do like, again, the filbert is the rounded edge. This is just a small synthetic. It's great for flower petals. Makes a nice rounded brush stroke, so it's nice. And I always have a few flats, a couple sizes in flats. You could go crazy and have all the sizes, but do you need them? No. I would have a couple good size flats. Sometimes I like a littler one that's almost the size, like if you were painting houses or something and you just wanted to pop windows in or something, it's the right size. These are, like I said, very inexpensive, but if you take care of them, they'll last you a long time. So for taking care of your brushes, there's some nice brush cleaners on the market. Dawn or Ivory soap. Lots of times I'll have a bar of Ivory soap. And when I'm done painting, I'll put the brushes right across the Ivory soap. You think it's clean, but wait till you see all the color that comes out. And then the soap sort of makes a little sizing again. You can just reshape your brushes. Don't keep them in your water while you're painting. Don't leave your paint on them while you're painting. Give them a good rinse, pat them dry, lie them flat, and use them that way. Because if you leave them in the water, first of all, their bristles are going to get bent. The water's going to get up here in the ferrule, and you're going to start losing brush hairs, and it's going to be one of those crazy brushes, that the hairs that stick out every which way. A little tip, though, if you do have some of those brushes, some of them are good to have because you can use them for snow or pouncing and different things. But if you want to kind of revive a brush that might have got a little mistreated, simply boil some water and dip it in, or run it under some hot boiling water, and it sometimes will get it back in shape. So you can always try that if you want to save a few brushes. So I do have a good variety. Like you can have a big flat. This is like a 3/4 inch, 1 inch synthetic, which is nice for some things too. But to start, just get a few flats, a few rounds, and your surface, and you can get a good start with some paints. I keep an old toothbrush around. Fabulous for spraying and spattering snow or stars or just texture. That's an easy one. Palette knife is nice to have. I sometimes use the modeling paste technique, or just apply my heavy body paint with the palette knife. So a nice palette knife is not a bad addition to your kit. How are we going to get our designs on our surfaces? Now, if you don't want to freehand your designs on, and some paintings we do, it's very easy, and I'll walk you through freehanding. But if it's a pattern more detailed and I give you the tracer for it, I'll give you the tracer in a few sizes usually. I welcome you to always ask me for another size. It's super easy for me to create different sizes depending on what canvas you want to use. You can print those designs out. I usually format them so they will fit on a few pieces of paper if it's a bigger canvas. How are you going to transfer it to your surface? Okay, if you have transfer paper, there's a transfer paper called Sorel, which sometimes it comes in a box, sometimes it's just little sheets, it comes in all colors. Once you get one piece, it's going to last you forever. And it almost ages well, because as you use it, it's not quite so new. It doesn't leave such a crisp, harsh line. So if you get one piece, I've used this piece forever for all sorts of tracings, and you can just use it over and over. You might want to have a piece of black and a piece of white. But again, it's not something you have to have. You can just simply take your tracing, your printout, and rub the back of it with a pencil. Where the lines are, you'll have that graphite. Turn it around. I usually use a ballpoint pen when I'm tracing that way afterwards to transfer, because it gives a nice crisp line rather than a pencil. If it's a little duller, it might leave a wide line. Don't press down too hard. You don't want it so dark or harsh that you have trouble covering it. But just do a nice little tracing if you want. I like to keep a piece of chalk handy in my kit too. If you want to sketch something freehand on your painting, it's a great way to sketch it and be able to change it out, erase it, redo it if you need to. And maybe an eraser, that's always handy. Pencil and eraser. What else? We've got paints, we've got surfaces. To mix your paints on a palette, you could use a piece of plexiglass. Sometimes people do little styrofoam plates or trays. A lot of times will use a paper palette, which you buy in pads, and you can just use what you're using and tear it off. If you find you're sitting for a long session and you don't want to have your paints dry out, you can always wet out some paper towels, kind of squeeze them out. You don't want them dripping, and you could lie them in your palette or on your palette paper. Put your acrylics on top, and they do stay workable a little longer. So if you know you're going to be working for a long while, that might be a good way to save paint. I use a little cup. You can use a little cup or a little whatever for your water. I usually keep 2 or 3 of those lined up so that I have some clean water to work with usually. It doesn't stay clean long. I have to be better, but I use a couple and I try to keep one just clean so that if I have any kind of washes I want to do or detail work, I'm always dipping my paintbrush into my water, thinning down my paint, and that gives you a nice line, but you want clean water for that. I did not mention when I was talking to you about the mixed media pad, the paper's really dry. As opposed to the canvas, you have a little more time to blend. On the mixed media pad, the paint sinks into the paper quickly and is a little bit more stubborn to blend. So what I do, what I find works a little bit, helps a little bit, is just some gesso. Just some gesso, and I put a coat of gesso on my page, on my paper page, let it dry, and then when it's dry, I find it's a little easier to paint on. I keep a heat gun or a blow dryer handy because sometimes I'm impatient and I want things to dry a little quicker, so I do speed that up. So that's it. That's the basic. You can find a little corner, a little table to work on. I was sharing about the little 3 shelf carts and little folding tables and things that people were mentioning. We have a little discussion going on about what's your setup like and where do you work. And if you can have a little kind of quick to get at setup, I find that you might sit down a little bit more often and get started. I know it's very daunting sometimes to say, oh, I really want to paint tonight when I get home from work. And then you get home and it's like to drag everything out, then I'm going to have to put it away. So if you could get a little corner, a little desk, a little someplace that you could just keep things fairly accessible, it might be a little easier. So I hope that answers some questions. There's also, oh, you know what? One more thing, sorry. If you'd like, paint markers are really fun. They come in different brands. They are filled with paint. So you can hear, you get a little metal ball in there that mixes the paint up for you. It's not really like a Sharpie or a regular marker. There's actual paint in here. And when you use them, it looks a little more like a painted line. So you can get wide ones, medium ones. I have some here that are really narrow. And you got to be careful with these. You do not want to get them near wet paint at all. So let your paint dry thoroughly, and then you can go over and do some details with these paint markers or just assign your name with. They're really handy. I think that's the basics, and even some things that aren't so basic that you don't need. If you have any questions, want to discuss, you know, what you're using, I'd love to hear. So do post that, ask any questions you have, and I want to make it easy for you to get started so we can start doing some basic lessons and some tutorials. And it's nice, I know when I do them, it's nice sometimes to watch them first and then sit down and paint with them later. So don't always feel like you have to sit down with all your supplies. If you see me doing something, hop on and just chat and just watch. So that is it. Cheryl from Tinker's Cart Art. If you would like to also be on my texting list, or you have a question or anything, you can reach me at this number very easily. It's 978-315-5650, and that will put you on my list, and you'll know when I'm going to go live to paint. I'll give you a little heads up, and if you have any questions, it's always a good way to reach me. So I'm gonna sign off, and I'm gonna see you on the other side. Ask me any questions. Okay, bye now.